I've been in a 5-way polyish relationship for many years. Wife wants to have a kid with one specific person, and I don't really like him. Not sure how to put my foot down without seeming like a controlling jerk. Longer version, my wife 34F, Lori, and I, 35M, have been together for 16 years and married for 13, and our relationship has been open since the day we met in college. About 8 years ago we met another couple, Kyle, 34M, and Andy, 33F, who were also open and poly, and we hit it off right away. In 2012 Andy got pregnant and, after a bit of math, we realized that I was probably the father. After discussing our future, we had a commitment ceremony in July 2012 and have all been a family ever since. When that occurred, Andy already had one baby with Kyle, and Lori had 2 by me. On the periphery of all this was Joseph, 34M. Joseph and Kyle have been friends since college, and Joseph, Kyle and Andy have had an intermittent sexual relationship since then. There was never anything serious there, but he was a regular third man in their threesomes. After the commitment ceremony, Joseph occasionally joined all of us for bedroom fun, but it was again an intermittent thing, and nothing serious. So it wasn't a huge surprise when Andy's baby turned out to be Joseph's and not mine. It was still a surprise, but it wasn't a problem. The baby was welcomed into our family, and Joseph became a more regular guest in our home. About a year after the baby was born, a few things happened that seriously changed things. First, both Andy and Lori got pregnant again. As we'd later learn, Andy's baby really was mine this time around, and Lori's baby is Kyle's. Shortly after that, Joseph was involved in a very serious motorcycle accident. He was hospitalized for nearly 2 months, lost his job, lost his apartment, and needed a lot of help. We ended up moving him in as a temporary thing to help him out. That was a year and a half ago. He's still here. Kyle is happy to have his old friend around all the time. The women both like him a lot, the sex is great between all of them, etc. 3 days ago, Lori was hinting around that she needed to talk about something serious but didn't know how to broach it. After a bit of discussion, it came out. She wants to have one more baby. And not just anyone's baby. She wants to have Joseph's baby. She wants to go off the pill, and have Kyle and I either abstain from having sex with her, or to have only condom-protected sex until Joseph gets her pregnant. When I asked her why, she just shrugged her shoulders and said that she loved him too, and that it was only fair. She said that Andy had a child by each of the 3 of us, and that she wanted to have a child by each of us too. After a bit more discussion, it came out that the idea was his, and that he was feeling left out because he didn't have a child with her. Putting aside the childish notion that babies should be created solely to placate someone's sense of fairness, I have a few serious problems with this. First, we already have 6 kids in the house, which is already a bit much at times. I thought we were all done having kids, and I'm not sure I really want any more. Second, there is no commitment to Joseph. Where the rest of us have gone through a commitment ceremony to join ourselves to each other, he hasn't. But the biggest is also the simplest. I don't really like the guy. Never have. He's got this odd vibe and has always struck me as a bit untrustworthy. He honestly reminds me of a shady used car salesman. He also drinks too much, is a bit of a bigot, and has a personality that I find grating. I didn't object to him hanging around now and then because he was Kyle's friend, and I didn't have a problem with the sex because it was just sex and I understood the history of their relationship, but now I'm wishing that I had. To be honest, I've long hoped that he'd meet someone who wasn't into polyamory, just to get him out of our sex lives and relationship. When he moved in after the accident, I kept my mouth shut because they were just trying to be helpful, and the discussions about his long-term plans have always alluded to the idea that he'd be moving out again someday. When he'd really annoy me, I'd tell myself that it was just temporary. Now I'm facing the possibility that this guy is going to be around forever. Kyle and Andy love the idea and think that Lori having Joseph's baby is romantic. Lori is looking to cement some kind of bond to him. I, on the other hand, seem to get angrier and angrier every time I see him. Almost violently angry. I want to chase this guy out of our home and never let him in again. I want to punch him square in his smug face. I temporarily tolerated someone that I disliked because I wanted to be generous and helpful, and because he's the father of one of Andy's children. Now because I didn't want to be a dick and consign a disabled man to homelessness, he's worked his way into our relationship and seems quite content to stay there forever. If this pregnancy happens, I know he'll never move out. How do I even begin to approach this? I don't really care if Joseph gets hurt in this, but every other solution seems to lead to the other people in my family being miserable, them being angry with me, or me living in silent misery. I can't see any way to resolve this that doesn't involve hurting those I love, or hurting myself. Update 1. Wow, where to begin? We had the discussion this morning, and it went about as poorly as expected. I began by clearing the air about my feelings for Joseph. I reminded everyone that he and I have never got along, and that I've always viewed his presence in our home as a temporary thing. I told them all that I still view it as a temporary thing, and that I can't support any moves to make his presence in our home more permanent. That's when Kyle and Andy dropped a bombshell. Following Lori's announcement a few days ago, they'd been talking about asking Joseph to join our family formally through a commitment ceremony, to make him a permanent part of our household. They were apparently going to bring it up with me today. I reminded them that, as part of our original commitment, we'd agreed that any additions to our family had to be done unanimously, and made it very clear that I'd never agree to that. My statement led to a huge argument, which included them calling me selfish and the statement that the three of them could hold a commitment ceremony without me. I didn't want to go there, but I shut that down by saying understand that, if you do that, you're not talking about adding someone new to the family, you're talking about replacing me with him. I can't stay in a family that would hurt and disrespect me that way. That led to even more arguing that didn't have any real conclusion. That's when I turned to Lori. I told her that I loved her, and that it broke my heart that she wanted to have a child with someone I couldn't stand. I also told her that I found it offensive that he'd ask her to have a child to placate his own ego, but that I thought the request was fairly consistent with his lack of character. I reminded her that a child is not an object to be traded for affection or love, and that they should only be created as an expression of that love. Thanks, Kalma Brotherk. I told her, without any hesitation, that having a child with Joseph would irrevocably change our relationship and drive a wedge between us. She would be choosing his happiness over mine, and that's how relationships end. She was crying the whole time, and when I was done she called me selfish and mean. She told me that she loved us both, and that she wouldn't choose between us. She flat out said that she wanted to have one more baby, that she'd already talked to Joseph about it, and that she wasn't going to go back on her word. She then offered to get rid of the exclusive part, saying that she was willing to go off the pill and have sex with both of us, letting fate decide the baby's paternity. I told her this was unacceptable, reminded her that I'm her husband and family, and he's not, and said that in not making a decision she was actually making a choice. I told her that I'd be more than willing to have another child with her, but that having a child with Joseph would be the end of us. And then I went to work. The discussion didn't really change anything or lead to any firm decisions, but the information is now out there and everyone knows where everyone else stands. We'll see where everything goes from here. Update 2. Well, in the day since my last update, a lot has happened. Some genuinely surprised me, and it looks like my family will be changing a bit, but things appear to be settling down. I should mention that this will be my last update. I mentioned to Lori that I'd been discussing our situation on the Reddit poly group, and she wanted to read it. After bawling her eyes out as she read through it, she apologized to me for everything, and we spent the night together. No sex, just holding each other all night. This morning she asked me to not discuss this anymore until we get everything worked out, but said I could post one final update. So where to begin? First, Joseph is moving out. Yep, it actually happened. And the shocking thing? It was his idea. He finally demonstrated some of that nice guy personality to me that I've never been able to connect with. I knew that Joseph would be home when I returned from work yesterday, and I was honestly expecting the worst. I was sure that someone would have clued him in on our conversation and expected him to react with his usual asshole persona. It didn't happen. Instead, a few minutes after I came home, Joseph walked into my room and asked me to join him in the backyard for a conversation. I was expecting a fist fight, but got an apology instead. He admitted that we've never got along, and admitted that he's never liked me either, but said that he didn't feel right about coming between me and Lori. He went on to talk about how happy his son is in our family, and how he didn't want to destroy that family. At the same time, he talked about how much he loved living with his son, and how he really didn't want to go back to only seeing him once a week. I'd never thought about that. In the end, he proposed a solution that I accepted. There's a nice apartment complex about 2 blocks from our house, and he wants to get an apartment there when he lands a job. He's pretty good at what he does and already has some job leads, so he anticipates that will happen pretty soon. He can visit our house whenever he wants during the week. I'm at work anyway, and can spend up to 2 nights a week at my house to be closer to his kid. If he does it right, that means he could still potentially see his son 7 days a week, while I only have to deal with him for 2. It's a great solution that gives us both what we want. He's also already told Lori that he doesn't want to have a baby with her, so that's now off the table. He actually admitted that he wanted to have a baby with Lori, but said that he didn't want to stick her into the middle of a conflict over it. And then we had a beer together. I didn't even complain when he handed me one of his Pisswater Coors Lights. Totally not kidding, this guy really does fit certain stereotypes. My low opinion of the guy went up a notch. As for Lori, she was a tearful mess for most of the day apparently, and Joseph taking the baby off the table was fairly devastating for her. After I got home and we talked a bit, she unloaded her soul and let me know just how much she wants another baby, and how much it hurt her that neither Kyle or myself want one with her. And then she felt even more hurt when neither of us even clued in on her level of hurt over it. After several hours of talking, we came to an agreement. We're going to have one more baby, but we'll wait another year for it. And, interestingly, she wants it to be mine. Not Kyle's or Joseph's. Kyle apparently doesn't have a problem with that at all. So, what about her relationship with Joseph? Well, here's where polyamory and open relationships can get complicated. The commitment ceremony is off the table, but she still wants to date him and have some sort of a relationship with him. No babies, no pregnancy, just love and sex now and then. She won't ever sleep with him when he's staying over at our house, but she'll still be going out on dates with him, visiting him at his place from time to time, and will be staying overnight on occasion, like, maybe once a month. While I have to admit that I'm still not totally thrilled with that, it's really just going back to the relationship they had before he moved in with us. I'll tolerate it for her happiness. Andy, on the other hand, is a problem. She is still furious with me over all of this and isn't showing any signs of backing down. In a way, it's understandable. She's had a sexual/emotional relationship with Joseph since she was 21 years old, and is the mother of his child, so she was really looking forward to him becoming part of our family and was deeply hurt by my rejection. Kyle told me last night that she had even talked about leaving the family over it and moving in with Joseph, but it was just angry talk. Right now, I can only get cold stares and slam doors from her. I really don't know how this is going to resolve itself, but for the sake of our daughter, I'll never stop trying. I stuck her in the middle of a fight between the fathers of two of her children, two men she loves, and she's furious at me for even forcing the choice. It may take some time for both of us to work through it. Kyle is a bit of a different story. He admitted that he knew Joseph and I didn't get along, and apologized to me for not talking to me sooner to make sure I was okay with everything. He apparently blames himself for the arguing, thinking that it was his job to run interference since Joseph was originally his friend, and I'm a life partner in his family. I told him not to worry about it because it was my fault that I didn't bring it up myself. Then we had a beer, Sierra Nevada West Coast Porter this time. Kyle has much better taste. So, with that, I'm going to wrap this up. I'd like to thank you all for your insights, commentary, and for putting up with my venting. Posting this here gave me a place to mentally work through some of these issues before I broached them with my family, and probably saved me from making some very ugly comments and choices. I genuinely appreciated reading your responses, and I know that Lori found many of your comments eye-opening and insightful as well. She loves the thought that we're a tribe. Because someone requested it, we may come back and do an AMA at some point about the emotional and family dynamics of living in a large poly/tribal household, but we need to finish working through the current situation first. This has raised my level of respect for him a bit, and I'm trying to move past the resentment this situation created. When Joseph and I were talking about not liking each other, we both agreed that, if nothing else, we both needed to be respectful of each other for the sake of the kids and the other members of the family. I brought it up, he fully agreed. Neither of us seems to want any kind of open conflict or competition in the household. Though, when I asked him to talk to Andy last night to get her to sit down and have a conversation with me, 2 days now without a word from her, his response was a blunt "You broke it. You fix it." We've still got a long way to go. I wouldn't say that I like him more, but I certainly have a bit more respect for him. He made it pretty clear that he was doing this for his son, and that he was putting his son's needs before his own. His kid has a happy, stable life and he wants to keep it that way. When he realized that he couldn't have what he wanted without also screwing up his kid's life, he put his child first. I have an enormous amount of respect for that decision. His entire solution really revolves around his son. It keeps him involved in his son's life on a daily basis. It puts him just around the corner so his son can visit him constantly. It reduces strife in his son's household, and it gives the kid stability. I understand where it's coming from too. I mentioned in the original discussion that he'd once liquidated his investments and retirement accounts to buy his sister and her kids a house after her husband walked out on them. The guy came from a fairly broken, unstable home and wants better for his children. When his sister was facing the same situation, he was saving her kids more than he was saving his sister. When his own kid was facing a self-destructing family, he pulled himself out of it to put the kids' well-being first. I don't know that Joseph and I will ever be friends, but my anger has largely faded and I wouldn't say that I hate him. I have a lot more respect for him than I did before this happened, but I think we're too different to actually ever like each other. As I said in the op, he openly admitted that the feeling is mutual. My only regret in letting Lori read the other thread is that she saw the word hate there. I've never used the word in an actual conversation over the past week, but Lori did mention it to Andy. Looking back, I think the hatred a reaction to being stuck in the middle of the situation at the time, and I absolutely don't feel any hatred toward him now. Still, it's hard to unsay a word. Now on to second story. Husband accused me of baby trapping him despite our 7-year marriage, vanished without a trace and left me shattered, pregnant, and alone. My husband, male 35, and I, F32, have been married for 7 years. He lived next door and we just clicked. It was like a fairy tale. One thing I have always thought made our marriage so strong was our friendship with each other and our trust in one another, although now my husband seems to think otherwise. Recently, my husband found out that his friend, Jeff, male 34, has been baby trapped. Basically, Jeff's wife, F32, stopped taking the pill and fell pregnant a few months into their relationship, and only came clean after the wedding. Jeff came from a very conservative family, which his wife knew, and so he felt obligated to marry her after the pregnancy. Unfortunately, he also now feels obligated to stay regardless of the clearly messed up dynamic because he feels that he has made a vow and will stick by his wife and child. My husband, for some reason, has been really rattled by this. I am currently 4 months pregnant with our first, and my husband asked me yesterday if I was trying to baby trap him. I first laughed because I honestly thought it was a joke. He was dead serious and doubled down, so I told him that we have already been married for 7 years and a baby was not going to trap him any more than he already is. My husband did not like that answer and said that there was no time limit on baby trapping, and that my intentions were clearly not pure given how I was acting as if his concerns were a joke. He said he had trusted me in the past, but me laughing in his face gave him no reason to trust me now. I did not really know what he wanted or how I was meant to respond, and I said we should talk about this in the morning. Today I woke up and my husband was gone, but I did have a nasty text from his brother, male 28, saying that I had forced my husband into this pregnancy, despite it having been a joint decision. My husband is MIA and not responding to calls or texts, and now I am wondering how on earth to go forward. Any advice is appreciated. Update 1. I didn't respond to anyone because my post was locked quite quickly, but I have read every single comment and message. I am very grateful. I realized while I was reading the comments that everyone was right. I wasn't angry enough. My husband had insulted me and our marriage in a very hurtful way, and it just didn't really register for a while. I was so confused and upset that it didn't occur to me to be angry, but I think everything just needed to sink in. In the meantime, I called my best friend, F31, who has been such a rock in my life. She came over with some chocolate, and was furious when she heard. She called her husband, M34, to the house after I had gotten everything out of my system. He is a family lawyer, and he said that he would happily represent me if I wanted to go through with a divorce. This man is a saint, and will draw up divorce papers on Monday. My mill, F66, showed up with my husband in the car not long after my best friend's husband arrived, and she practically dragged him to the door. My mill said that he had showed up at theirs late last night saying that he was certain that I was using the baby to trap him. Fortunately my mill is a smart woman and absolutely tore him a new one before dragging him to the house today to apologize. My worm of a husband did not look me in the eye the entire time, but said that he was scared about becoming a dad and projected his fears onto me. He said he wasn't sure if he was ready for that kind of commitment, but he will step up, as if he is some kind of hero. I roll. I called him a coward and told him that he should stay with his parents until I am ready to talk to him. I didn't want to say anything about the divorce papers because I didn't know what his reaction would be, but he will find out soon enough. I also showed my mill the text from my bill, and her face was like a storm cloud. I don't know what will happen there, but I am sure it will be bad. For now, I am exhausted and just want to curl up and cry. My best friend has said she'll spend the night with me and we can watch silly movies. I have also made an appointment with a therapist for next week, but for now, I just need to rest. I am exhausted and devastated that my marriage has come crumbling down. Update 2. Overall, everything has settled a little bit. In good news, I had a scan with the doctor, my mill attended with me, and the baby is happy and healthy. I finally found out the gender. I am having a little girl. I am over the moon. My mill was a gem, and was so touched that I had included her in the scan. She is very excited to be a granny. On that note, my mill organized a family lunch a couple of days after the scan. I was a little reluctant, but I knew that she had good intentions and wouldn't do anything to make matters worse. When I arrived, my husband and Bill were there, along with my Phil, M70, and Mill. It was quite awkward until my Mill asked if anyone had anything to say. My Bill spoke first and apologized for his awful text, saying that he was swept up in the moment and wanted to support his brother. I explained how hurtful it had been to receive such a nasty and vindictive message, and that he knew, as well as anyone, that my husband and I had been trying for almost a year. He hung his head and mumbled something. That was pretty much the last I heard out of him for the afternoon. Next, my Mill looked quite pointedly at my husband, but he actively avoided anyone's eyes. Eventually she spoke up and announced that my husband would no longer be welcome to stay in their house. She said that she was ashamed to have her son behave the way that he has, and that she would prefer to make space for her granddaughter rather than have some lowlife hanging around. My husband had opened up his mouth to say something earlier, but his eyes lit up when she said granddaughter. My husband had always wanted a girl and he was suddenly in tears saying that he was so pleased to hear the gender. My husband was suddenly wanting to touch my belly and asked if he could come home and paint the nursery. I told him in no uncertain terms that he was not welcome and that he had destroyed any trust I had in him. I told him that if I took him back, I would be worried that he would disappear at any kind of big news and that I couldn't have someone at my side who balked at the first chance. He asked me if I was telling him it was over, and I point blank told him that I had engaged a lawyer. My husband was kind of frantic, but I felt so calm, like someone had put a blanket over me in the situation. Normally I am a big crier, but I felt so removed from everything. My husband said that this was not fair. He had shown a little bit of panic and suddenly I am throwing away our life and denying him his daughter. My Phil reminded him that this is the same baby he felt trapped by no more than 2 weeks ago. My husband said it was a mistake and he was stressed, but my Mill asked him how he thought I felt. She asked him to imagine being so vulnerable and giving up your body to grow a family, and suddenly the one person you trust is accusing you of terrible things. He said it was a mistake and he projected his fears onto me. I told my husband that I felt so broken when he left because I had all these dreams of a beautiful family which came crashing down in an instant. My husband said that he wanted those things with me and he wanted our baby girl, but that he let the panic overwhelm him. I told him that wasn't a good enough excuse for what he put me through, and that he certainly didn't seem panicked when his mom had to drag him to my door to apologize. He didn't have much of an answer other than to say that he was ready now and wanted our girl. In all of this, in all the times he told me he wanted me and our baby, he never once apologized properly. After a very long discussion, The lunch wrapped up and my Mill stood by what she had said about my husband not being welcome. He asked again if he could come home with me, and I told him that it was my house. I owned the house before we married, and it was going to be a safe space for me. That is to say, he is not welcome. As far as I know, he is staying at some hotel. Finally, he was served divorce papers at work on Friday. My bestie's husband drafted them earlier, but I wanted to wait until I had thought it all through. I received a few missed calls and crying voicemails asking if I was really throwing away our family, but I did not respond. He even took a crying selfie sitting in his car, which my bestie laughed at quite a bit. My Mill called me when she heard, and told me that I am making the right decision. She said she never wanted my marriage to end this way or for her son to be so callous, but she said she is here for my baby and I, and that we will always be family. She even tried to apologize on my husband's behalf, but I told her that was not necessary. At the end of the day, his actions are his to own. My best friend has been around all weekend and we went baby clothes shopping for a little bit of sunshine in all of this. She has been such a rock, and her husband has helped so much with the process. I don't know what will happen next, but I feel much calmer and like I am making the right decision.